Well, this is the Paul Hudson Weather Show on the BBC. Later in the show, I'll be finding out how the shipping forecast is put together. First, how do our brains process information about the weather? It's something we forecasters talk about a lot. Should we present the weather in such and such a way or not? Well, the question is a serious scientific one and something George Marshall has studied in great depth. George is the founder of Climate Outreach, and he's speaking at a climate action conference in North Derbyshire next week. He's a specialist in psychology and social aspects of why people do or don't believe the science before them. And George is with me now. How are you, George?
Hello there, Paul.
Now then, tell us what's wrong with our brains. Why don't people believe what we tell them about the weather, and in particular climate change?
Well, there's nothing wrong with our brains, Paul. They're amazing machines that have managed to make us the smartest creatures on Earth. We've done great things with them. The problem is I guess one of the problems is we have to ignore things. You know, we're so bombarded with information, just walking down the street, just turning on the TV. And so we become very good at not paying attention to things. And I guess the problem really for climate change is that it's got a lot of qualities that we've become very good at not paying attention to. So, you know, the scientists will say, well, there's a huge problem which is coming up by the end of the century. And we just say, okay, that's outside the range of stuff I'm going to worry about. Or there's a cost involved, or there's a bit of uncertainty there. We know that the science is very complex. And people say, well, you know what, let me know when you've made your minds up about it. And the problem is that what is really an inbuilt, instinctive capacity to push things to one side is applied to an entire issue. So something can actually be quite dangerous and threatening, and yet you can ignore it potentially indefinitely. I guess another problem with climate change is that in various ways we're all involved with it. We drive our cars and we live our lives, and in various ways the way that we live contributes to pollution, and therefore it's especially hard for us to accept it, because we can't blame someone else. We can't say it's your fault. We have to recognise that we're all involved.
Now, when it comes to extreme weather like flooding and heat waves, the flooding we've had this winter, I do find that everyone wants to talk about it, and suddenly people's brains are very much switched on to weather and climate, aren't they?
Well, it's true that climate change becomes stronger for people around extreme weather. Although what's interesting is that, again, we're very clever at picking things to support the view we already have, you know, and we do this all the time in our lives.
Especially in Yorkshire.
Especially in Yorkshire. Yeah, well, we'll say, where we live is the best place on earth, and look, there's the proof of it, or like, my kids are smarter than your kids, or, whatever it is we want to do. And so, therefore, people who are inclined to think that the weather is changing, and as we know, there's very strong science behind that, say, look at that extreme weather, that proves it. But people who are not inclined to believe it just say, well, it just goes to show that the weather goes up naturally. And we do have a problem with reading the weather, which is, as you know better than anyone, the weather goes up and down. So we're used to those variations. It's very hard for us to look at 1 year it's hot, 1 year it's cold, and to tell that over time it's getting hotter. Because we always take our measurement for what is going on from the last thing we can remember happening. And that tends to be not 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it tends to be last year, you see. And then the weather goes over, we have extreme weather, we have flooding, but we're very good also at recovering. It blows over, we get over it, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and then we say, okay, well, let's not worry about that anymore.